Who is there to be smelled by whom? Who is there to be heard by whom? Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we are talking about the Wild Hunt, and in the spirit of all honesty, I just want to let you all know that some of what I'm covering in the course of this class series was actually part of our series on the history of Saturnalia, Yule, and Christmastide. However, since that series came out, we've actually done more research into the topic, and this is more in depth, specifically on the Wild Hunt, rather than the history of midwinter, Yule, solstice, etc. Now, if you are a patron who received our book on the history of midwinter, all of this research is actually in that book. And all of my sources are available for that book as well. But for those of you who are not patrons, some of this content is entirely new. I'm going to get into it, and this is probably going to be class 1 of a series. I hope you stick it out through all of the videos and don't dip after just the first one. But I appreciate you even tuning in at all. Please remember to like and subscribe, and all right, thanks for joining us. Belief in the Wild Hunt has persisted for centuries, and the first accounts that mention it have been lost into the depths of time. The Wild Hunt seems based in beliefs that have deep roots in the mentalities of Indo-European peoples. The Wild Hunt has assumed thousands of forms and multiple natures. Its innumerable variations are made more complicated by the fact that the belief is a still living tradition. The narratives are made of an enormous body of knowledge that is inextricably tangled and fraught with controversy and misinterpretation. These stories are characterized by an advanced syncretism and the synthesis of information from a wide variety of traditions from pre-Christian, Roman, pagan, and Christian beliefs. Complicating any research on the hunt is the fact that witches, occultists, and neo-pagans have been spreading the false narrative of the history of the Wild Hunt for so long that many books on the history and folklore just recite those false narratives as fact. To avoid making the same mistake as many other witches while documenting this history, we are going to start with a very simple definition of the Wild Hunt and then expound upon it. The Wild Hunt is a band of otherworldly beings who make a passage over the earth during certain times of the year. This ride is marked by a series of phenomena, by which it can be known that the hunt is riding. Beyond these elements, all else varies by culture, time, and religion. The makeup of the hunt, the appearance of its members, the presence or absence of animals, noise or silence, the existence of a male or female lead rider who, depending on the country and the region, bears different names: the huntsman, the wild god, Woden, Wode, Mother Holda, Dame Hole, Perkta, Henneken, and the Welsh psychopomp Gwyn ap Nudd. Historical or legendary figures like Theodoric the Great, the Danish king Valdemar Atterdag, biblical figures such as Herod, Cain, Gabriel, or the devil, or an unidentified lost soul or spirit. This is all complicated by the existence of numerous nightly hosts, which became conflated and eventually confused. These narratives often syncretize and merge before separating again, often bequeathing one or more elements to the narratives to which they are temporarily connected. This is due in part to the nature of mankind, which is to share and evolve stories together, and to find common elements and to blur cultural boundaries, but also this is due to the efforts of the medieval church. Both the demonization and the angelification of the Wild Hunt are due to the medieval church either attempting to vilify the practices of non-Christians or to spackle them over with Christian figures. The Interpretatio Christiana overlays and overshadows many of the ancient elements of the story, reshaping the narrative in the dogma of the dominant religion. Unfortunately, the neo-pagan writers who attempted to reconstruct the pre-Christian narrative often did so in a fashion that either made up details or that threw away those elements that were too disturbing, which unfortunately is an attitude that is far too frequent among many researchers who strive to make the text say what these men and women already believe to be the truth. Reconstructing the older versions of the Wild Hunt isn't easy. The accounts are never first-hand and most often went through 3 stages of transmission. First, the accounts were oral. Next, they were written down. Then the accounts went back into the oral tradition, reinterpreted through the lens of the evolving and increasingly Christianized population. The new oral tradition, consisting of rehashed beliefs and legends, often partially conserved the Christian message. What might appear to a modern historian as a genuine original folk belief could very well have emerged from scriptures, scholarly literature, and even from sermons. Due to the efforts of the Church to alter the folk beliefs of the region, the bulk of the accounts of the Wild Hunt are from clergy and almost certainly contain many distortions of the true nature of what was recorded. The earliest surviving written records of the hunt. The legions of the Wild Hunt were sometimes composed of the living, a horde of witches who had left their bodies behind to ride in spirit form in a horde led by various figures: Diana, Danu, Herodias, Satya, Dame Abunde, Perkta, or Whole. Sometimes they gathered the dead, revenants, or damned souls who could find no rest in order to have them ride with them. This is seen in the versions of Mesnia Helican, Osculrea, and Asgardsrea. The first instance of the belief in the Ladies of the Night as the Wild Hunt comes from a canon attributed to the Council of Ancyra, which met in 314 CE, but that canon didn't actually make an appearance until 872 CE in the Capitularies of Charles the Bald, who was a 9th century king of West Francia, king of Italy, and emperor of the Carolingian Empire. As a side note, he also wasn't bald. It was either a reference to him actually having a lot of hair or not having a lot of land. It was picked up anew in 899 CE in a treatise by Regino, the abbot of Prüm. This also is not to be omitted, that certain wicked women, turned back to Satan, seduced by demonic illusions and phantasms, believe of themselves and profess to ride upon certain beasts in the nighttime hours with Diana, the goddess of the pagan, or Herodias, and an innumerable multitude of women, and to traverse great spaces of the earth in the silence of the dead of night, and to be subject to her laws as of a lady, and on fixed nights to be called to her service. Another text, known as the Canon Episcopi, was inserted into the canon in 1066 CE by Burchard of Worms, the bishop of the imperial city of Worms in the Holy Roman Empire. In his Decretum, he offers evidence that the Church attacked an allegedly pagan belief that was still vigorous enough to be viewed as dangerous. Have you believed what many women, turning back to Satan, believe and affirm to be true, as you imagine in the silence of the night when you have gone to bed and your husband lies in your bosom, that while you are in bodily form, you can go out by closed doors and are able to cross the spaces of the world with others deceived by the like error, and without visible weapons, slay persons who have been baptized and redeemed by the blood of Christ? Burchard recorded the belief that certain people, specifically women, possessed the ability to propel flesh and blood doubles of themselves to roam for great distances, allowing them to commit evil deeds, killing people, eating them, placing pieces of wood or straw in the place of their hearts, and then reanimating them. He said, "Have you believed, as certain women are accustomed to believe, to wit that by virtue of other limbs provided you by the devil, you have crossed in the silence of the quiet night, through closed doors, to fly into the clouds where you have waged battle on others, both inflicting and receiving wounds." These women who roamed the night are found again in the Benandanti folk custom of the 16th and 17th century northeastern Italy in Friuli. Italian historian Carlo Ginzburg, then of the University of Bologna, published a book in 1966 CE exploring the trial accounts of those Benandante who were interrogated and tried by the Roman Inquisition, using such accounts to elicit evidence for the beliefs and practices of the Benandanti. The women stated that they participated in nocturnal visionary journeys, during which they believed that their spirits traveled out of their bodies and into the countryside, where they could do battle with malevolent witches who threatened the local crops. Ginzburg went on to examine how the Inquisition came to believe the Benandanti to be witches themselves and ultimately persecuted them out of, well, supposedly out of existence, but definitely into hiding. There are many parallels with similar visionary traditions surrounding the earliest legends of the Wild Hunt. In one portion of the document, Burchard recorded that the women of this wild hunt ride with the leading figure of Herodias, a princess of the Herodian dynasty of Judea during the time of the Roman Empire. Legend connects her with John the Baptist's execution. In another, he says the women ride with Holda, or with the benevolent one. Have you believed that there is any woman who can do that which some, deceived by the devil, affirm that they must do of necessity or by his command, to wit with a host of devils transformed into the likeness of women, she who common folly calls Holda, who must ride on certain beasts during special nights and be counted as members of the company of demons? Burchard seemed to lack an understanding of the ancient Scandinavians' concept of the Hamre, which we might consider or refer to as an animus or spiritus. This aspect of the soul is considered to be able to quit the body while it is sleeping, is in a coma or a trance, or is afflicted by a serious illness. It can then go about in the form of an animal or human. The clerics were unable to grasp this cultural concept, and so they attributed the stories of people whose double had rejoined their bodies to a trick of the devil. The Diana that Burchard recorded is almost certainly not the same as the Roman Diana whose cult Margaret Alice Murray, who lived from 1863 to 1963, an Anglo-Indian Egyptologist, archaeologist, anthropologist, historian, and folklorist, claims survived into the Middle Ages. Saint Martin of Braga, in Latin Martinus Bracarensis, who lived from 520 CE to 580 CE, the Archbishop of Bracara Augusta in Galacia, now Braga in Portugal, a missionary, monastic founder, and an ecclesiastical author, claims that this Diana that's being referenced in these texts is a sylvan and rural goddess worshipped by 5th and 6th century peasants. The Diana in both accounts is almost certainly a misinterpretation or reinterpretation of Danu, also called Diana or Anu. Diana was regularly portrayed as the ruler of the fairy kingdom in demonological literature, such as King James VI of Scotland's Demonology, written in 1599 CE, which says that she belongs to the 4th kinds of spirits, which by the Gentiles was called Diana and her wandering court, and amongst us is called fairy, as I told you, or our good neighbors. Early Christian writers demonized the goddess Diana of Rome and Danu of the Germanic peoples in one fell swoop, while also conflating the two figures, who were only superficially similar. The question remains as to whether Danu led the wild hunt in older oral legends that predate Burchard writing about them. Herodias is also described as a flying deity in the Isengrinus, a 12th century work attributed to Nevardus, who also referred to her as Feraldis and explained how she was condemned to travel through the air. And the Virgin Feraldis, condemned to unjust punishment by a saint. Herod was famous because of this child and could have been happy thanks to her, but an unhappy love was also the misfortune of this young woman. This virgin burned to share the bed of John the Baptist and had vowed to give herself to no other man but he. Her father, having discovered his daughter's passion, became angry, and he cruelly ordered the innocent saint decapitated. In despair, the young woman asked to see the severed head, and one of the king's servants bore it to her on a platter. She tenderly clasped it between her arms and bathed it in her tears, which she wished to accompany with her kisses. The head fled from her embrace and repelled her by blowing at her, and she was carried off by an opening made in the roof by the whirlwind, exhaled by the saint. Since that time, she has been pursued through the empty reaches of the sky by the anger of St. John the Baptist in the form of his breath, because he dwelled too fixedly upon the past. Dead he tormented her, and alive he did not return her love. Yet fate did not let her die entirely. Honor sweetened her mourning, and respect softened her punishment. 1/3 of humanity serves this afflicted sovereign, who rests upon the oaks and hazel trees during the second half of the night, until the final crow of the black cock. Today her name is Herodias. She was formerly known as Herodias. This version of her legend is also found in Spain, where Herodias was given the same posthumous punishment. De la danza era a quien están condenses las Herodias por la muerto del Bautisto, the aerial dance to which Herodias was condemned for having caused the death of John the Baptist. Le Roman de Isengrin by Anonyme. Elizabeth Charbonnier, the translator, noted that the nocturnal journey of Herodias is reminiscent of witches who ride through the sky. Wathurius, also Rathier or Rather of Verona, who lived from 890 to 974 CE, a teacher, writer, and bishop, in 890 CE, in Liège, Belgium, wrote that 1/3 of humanity, par hominum meste tertia serute here, left their bodies to ride with Herodias. Le Roman de la Rose, the Romance of the Rose, a medieval poem in Old French, styled as an allegorical dream vision, finished by Jean de Meung around 1280 CE, says of this: "Many people's senses deceive them, and they believe they are witches, wandering the night with Dame Abonde, and they say that 1 of every 3 children of this land exhibit this condition and go forth 3 nights a week, wherever fate takes them, entering into houses, for neither locks nor bars can stop their passage, and they can enter through a chink or a cat-hole. Their souls can quit their bodies, and they can accompany the good ladies into other places and into other houses while their bodies remain in bed." John of Salisbury, who lived from 1115 CE to 1180 CE, who was among the foremost philosophers of the so-called 12th century Renaissance, contributing to the development of political and moral philosophy as well as to the medieval theory of education and to the dissemination of emerging Aristotelian learning, knew of the story of Herodias and repeats it in Polycratius. They claim that a Noctiluca or Herodias, or a witch ruler of the night, convokes nocturnal assemblies at which they feast and riot and carry out other rites, where some are punished and others rewarded according to their merits. Moreover, infants are set out for lamias and appear to be cut up into pieces, eaten, and gluttonously stuffed into the witches' stomachs. Then, through the mercy of the witch ruler, they are returned to their cradles. Who could be so blind as to not see in all this a pure manifestation of wickedness created by sporting demons? Indeed, it is obvious from this that it is only poor old women and the simple-minded kinds of men who enter into these beliefs. John of Salisbury merged beliefs regarding the Lamia, who, along with the other ladies of the night, Herodia, Bundia, Satia, etc., are said to devour children. Thanks to William of Auvergne, who lived from 1180 CE to 1249 CE, and Gervase of Tilbury, who lived from 1152 CE to 1221 CE, we do in fact know that the Lamia were thought to be sturges that entered houses in the dead of night to feed on little children. An important source on all of this was the Decretum Gratiani, also known as the Concordia Discordiantium Canonum, or simply as the Decretum, a collection of canon law compiled and written in the 12th century as a legal textbook by the jurist known as Gratian, a canon lawyer from Bologna who flourished in the mid-12th century, which took shape around 1142 CE, included in the aforementioned Bertrand of Worms Decretum, which was compiled between 1008 CE and 1012 CE, which was an early attempt at collecting all of canon law. The idea that the Wild Hunt was a group of witches or goddess-led women leaving behind their bodies was thoroughly demonized by the Decretum Gratiani, which led to further decalogues and catechetical works condemning the practice being written unspoken throughout the entire Middle Ages. The Decretum Gratiani then also became a major inspiration to the Inquisitors, who targeted women in the witch hunts. In his De Universo, the Bishop of Paris, William of Auvergne, who lived from 1180 or 1190 CE to 1249 CE, criticized the non-Christian beliefs that were widespread and prevalent throughout his life, during which he also spoke of a nocturnal host of witches traveling through the skies at night. The same is true of the spirit that, under the guise of a woman who in the company of others visits homes and services at night, she is named Satya from satiety, and also Dame Abunde, because of the abundance she bestows upon the dwelling places she visits. It is this very kind of spirit that the old women call the ladies, and in regard to whom they maintain this error to which they alone give credence, even in delusional dreams. They say that these ladies consume the food and drink they find in houses without consuming them entirely, nor even reduce their quantity, especially if the dishes holding food are left uncovered, and the containers holding drink are left uncorked when left out for the night. But if they find these containers covered or closed or corked, they will not touch either food or drink, and this is the reason why the ladies abandon these houses to woe and ill fortunes, without bestowing satiety or abundance upon them. William continued on to scold the foolishness of women who think that the host of women are beneficial. It is our old women who, through lack of wisdom, have, in astonishing fashion, spread this detestable belief that they have maintained and fixed upon ineradicably in the minds of other women. It is especially women whom they have persuaded in the existence of the ladies of the night and their beneficial qualities, as well as of the attribution of great good to the houses said ladies frequent. The Dominican preacher and author Johannes Nider, who lived from 1380 CE to 1438 CE, recorded in his work Praeceptorium Divinae Legis, recorded the names of individuals who claimed they had been transported to secret meetings with Herodias, and condemned the women of his region who, during the Ember days, out of their senses, boasted of having seen the souls in purgatory and of many other fantasies. Nider wrote that the women reported having seen other worlds, including purgatory and hell, having recovered stolen or lost objects that had been taken from them, and other miraculous visions. It was his belief that the women had been taken into their trances by the devil, and they falsely believed that they were traveling with Diana, Herodias, or Venus. He also observed that while in their trance states they did not respond to being burned with a candle. And the Malleus Maleficarum, the hammer of the witches, printed around 1486 CE or 1487 CE, the inquisitors Jacques Springer and Heinrich Kramer recorded that riding with Diana or Herodias was just roaming with the devil, who had deceived the riders by taking a false form. The wild hunt as a form of nocturnal flying women is also found in southeastern Germanic regions, in South Germany bordering France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. In those areas, the leader of the hunt is often considered to be Perchta, who we can get into more later. Berthold of Regensburg, also called Ratisbone, who lived from circa 1210 CE to 1272 CE, a Franciscan preacher of repentance with enormous influence, violently condemned Bavarians for believing that the night-riding women were benevolent. You should not believe at all in the people who wander at night, and their fellows, no more than the benevolent ones and the malevolent ones, in fairies, in nightmares of both sexes, in the ladies of the night, in nocturnal spirits, or those who travel by riding this or that. They are all demons, nor should you prepare the table any more for the blessed ladies. Berthold of Regensburg further castigated the preparing of a table for the night-riding women in another sermon, in which he stated, "The foolish peasant women indeed believe that the ladies of the night and night-walking spirits visit their homes, and they set a table for them." The medieval German historian and chaplain Matthias von Chemnitz, who lived from 1429 CE to 1476 CE, made a distinction between evil sects of witches, which included practices such as Sabbats, deals with devils, and the committing of crimes, and good sects of witches. He described a sect of witches who had been persecuted in his area of Heidelberg in approximately 1475 CE, who traveled during the Ember days and credited them with casting non-fatal spells on the men of the region and causing storms. He also referred to an incident from the life of Saint Germano that was described in the Legends Aurea, a collection of legendary lives of saints written by Jacobus de Varigine, circa 1230 CE to 1298 CE, an Italian chronicler and Archbishop of Genoa. He referred to an incident described in the story of the saint wherein offerings were given to the good women who go forth in the night. Another account given in the sermons of Johann Geiler von Krieyersberg, who lived from 1445 CE to 1510 CE, one of the most popular preachers of the 15th century, is recorded in the collection of his orations titled Die Emis. He described night-riding witches that traveled to see Frau Finis, and also described this occurring on the Ember days. Like in other accounts mentioned here, he claimed that the women who fell into swoons during which they were completely insensate, that they could be pricked, burned, or scalded and not respond. When they came back to their bodies, they described that they had traveled through the many worlds, seen heaven, and recovered stolen or secret or even hidden objects. Like the aforementioned Nider, Geiler concluded that the visions must be sent by devils in order to deceive. However, unlike Nider, he further recorded works, which include questions asked by his congregation and answered by Geiler, reveal that Geiler believed that during the Ember days of Christmas, in particular, a furious horde appeared, consisting of those who had died and who were compelled to wander the earth. He seemed to believe that the women were riding with that horde. More on the hunt as a horde of the dead, rather than a horde of night-riding witch women, later on in this class series. So, because we've now mentioned them several times, what exactly are the Ember days? 4 times a year, there are periods of prayer, fasting, and deprivation that last for 3 days. So, 12 days out of the year, Catholics give up the bounty of their lives in order to better appreciate having been given that bounty. An oversimplification of this, but so be it. These periods roughly coincide with the solstices and the equinoxes. The original papal decree said that the Ember days were to occur during these times of the year so that the law of abstinence may apply to every season of the year. Fun fact, the word ember originates from the Latin quattuore tempora, literally 4 times, as in this is a quarterly thing. Some scholars believe that the women who were insensate and having visions were actually doing so because they were fasting, and fasting can induce altered mental states. Around 1350 CE, an anonymous pamphlet titled Mirror of Souls, not the Mirror of Souls written by the Inquisitor Martin of Amberg, that's a different one, stated that the night-riding women were part of the wild hunt, which we'll get into more later, and connected their activities with the night Epiphany and with Percta. Sinning also they who, on the night of Epiphany, leave food and drink upon their table, so that all shall smile upon them over the coming year, and good luck will grace them in all things. Therefore also sinning are they who offer food to Perct, and red snails or shoes to the howler, or to the nightmare. Some Christian writers of the Middle Ages associated the night-riding hordes of women with a leader who was of some kind of merged combination of Percta, Abundia, Diana, and Satya. A medieval professor of theology, Thomas von Hasselbach, who lived from circa 1420 CE to 1464 CE, referred to the leader of the night-riding women by multiple names in his work De Decum Praeceptis, treating them as interchangeable, including Bundia, Finzin, Saxemper, and Sacria. Johann Herold, also known as Discipulus, unknown birth date to 1468 CE, a Dominican preacher and prolific author of several popular sermon books in the 15th century Europe, also associated Percta with Diana. A Bavarian text, the Thesaurus Pauperum, written in 1468 CE, also equated Abundae and Percta. The second type of superstition is the idolatrous custom of those who leave out vessels filled with food and drink at night, intended for the ladies expected to visit, Dame Abundia and Satia, or as the people call her, Frau Perkt or Perktum, because this lady always comes with her retinue. They leave these out so when they find these dishes holding food and drink in open sight, they will later refill them and grant abundance and riches upon the household. Many believe that these ladies, led by Frau Perkt, will visit their homes during the holy nights between the birth of Jesus and the night of Epiphany. There are many who leave out upon their tables during these nights bread, cheese, milk, eggs, wine, water, and foodstuff of all sorts, as well as spoons, plates, cups, knives, and other similar objects with the visit of Frau Perkt and her troop in mind. Their hope is this lady will find it pleasant there, and consequently look with favor on the prosperity of the household and the conduct of its temporal affairs. The historian and writer Johannes Praetorius, 1630 CE to 1680 CE, wrote that Diana travels on Christmas night with her furious band of warriors, and then later states that Dame Hold or Holda begins wandering the world on Christmas, once again conflating two figures. When a text does state a specific time period for when the night-riding horde of women are about, it sets the time period during the Ember days around Christmas, or during the period between Christmas and Epiphany, during the 12-day Christmastide cycle. This is also when other versions of the hunt are said to be about in many accounts. In cases where a feast table was laid out for the night-riding women, the records seem to agree that if the horde was pleased by the feast, they would bless the household with wealth, wellness, and fertility. In some cases, when the feast table was laid out during the Christmastide season, it determined the course of the year following the new year. This greatly resembles the Roman beliefs that we have already detailed in our History of Saturnalia classes, with the Table of Souls or Table of the Deceased. Some of the records refer to this as mensas ornare, mensas being the top portion of an altar in Roman Catholicism. It can be translated from Latin to English as both decorate the altar and decorate the table. A Munich manuscript from the Alderspach monastery alludes and refers to those who participate in the ritual laying out of the feast for the night horde of women as those who garnish their table for Perkt. Thank you for joining us, and tune in next time when we will cover the head of the wild hunt as Perkta, the belly slitter. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.